You know those movies that make you question not just what you watched, but your entire life choices that led to watching it? Well, I found 6 horror films that will make you want to delete your streaming services and possibly your memories. From car pregnancy to walrus transformation, these aren't just weird movies. They're you need to call your therapist weird. And the most disturbing one, it involves the upper class in the world's worst orgy. So after hearing that, if you're still sane enough to click buttons, hit the like button. Let's hit 50,000 likes and maybe I will post feet pics. Just kidding, that won't happen. Let's start with Society. Society! A movie that makes your family reunion look like a Disney special. Why? Well, picture this. You're a teenager in Beverly Hills, living the dream when you start noticing something off about your family. Maybe they're acting weird, maybe they're part of a cult, or maybe, and this is where it gets spicy, they're actually flesh-melting aristocrats who turn into human Play-Doh to feast on the poor. This film builds up like a regular rich people are weird story until it hits you with what I can only describe as the world's worst massage parlor. You think your rich aunt's weird MLM parties are bad? Try watching the upper class literally melt together into a flesh blob for dinner. It's like someone watched The Real Housewives and thought, you know what this needs? More body horror. But here's the real kicker. The special effects in this thing are insane. We're talking pre-CGI, all practical effects, and it just looks like someone's gonna have to file an HR complaint after watching this. Honestly, I don't know what it is about movies, but pre-CGI when it was done well looks so much better in horror than any CGI I've seen. I feel like a lot of people agree with me on this, but can someone actually explain to me why this is? Anyways, the climax of this movie is known as the shunting. It's basically what would happen if you had a dream and the dream turned into a nightmare and then it turned into a wet dream. It's pretty fucked up. But what's really interesting about this movie is the fact that it's got social commentary. Let's talk about it. This movie isn't just saying eat the rich. It's showing the rich literally eating everyone else. It's like if Karl Marx wrote a horror movie while tripping on acid. The whole thing is a metaphor for class warfare that's about as subtle as a brick to the face, but you know, with more butt faces. I can't tell you why I made that joke on YouTube. You just have to watch the movie to find out. But I guess I'll play the audio and blur the video.
I am a butthead.
Yes, you heard that right. There's a scene where a guy's face becomes a butt. The scariest part, this movie came out in 1989 and somehow it feels more relevant today. Nothing says eat the rich quite like watching them actually turn into a flesh blob to consume the lower class. It's basically a documentary about trickle-down economics, except the only thing trickling down is, you know what? Let's not finish that sentence. But if you think society's body horror is wild, wait until you see what happens when a podcaster meets a guy with a very specific marine mammal fetish. Yeah, we gotta talk about Tusk. This is what happens when someone pitches a movie idea while high and actually gets funding. No, seriously, Kevin Smith literally came up with this during a podcast where he was absolutely zoinked. And I mean like Scooby-Doo level zoinks. Ruh-roh, Reggie, this is some good writ. But somehow, that's not even the weirdest part about this film. You've got Justin Long playing a podcaster, already unrealistic because he's somehow making money from podcasting, and then he travels to Canada for an interview. Now, I know what you're thinking. The worst thing that could happen in Canada is getting force-fed maple syrup while they're thanking you for it. Oh, you idiots. I'm actually Canadian if you didn't know. And guess what? I'm about to break every single fucking stereotype there is. Thank you. Well, speaking of Canadians, I need to introduce you to Howard Howe, who's played by Michael Parks, who makes your creepy uncle's Facebook posts on your birthday look completely normal. Howard's got this weird obsession with walruses, specifically one that saved his life years ago. And because therapy apparently doesn't exist in this universe, he decides the best way to process this trauma is by surgically transforming people into walruses. Not a costume, an actual human walrus hybrid, complete with a blubber suit made from human skin. Yeah, that's a sentence I never thought I would say. The transformation scenes are simultaneously the most hilarious and disturbing things you'll ever watch. Imagine if Dr. Frankenstein was really into marine biology and shopped exclusively at Spirit Halloween while he was jerking his shit. The final form looks like what would happen if a walrus melted together with a leather couch. And somehow, this movie gets worse, because the real cherry on the top is Justin Long's character fully embracing his new walrus life, living in an animal sanctuary and crying whenever he sees his ex-girlfriend. It's like The Little Mermaid in reverse, and instead of a beautiful princess, you get a crying walrus man eating raw fish in a pool. And don't even get me started on Johnny Depp's character, who shows up looking like if Inspector Gadget had a midlife crisis and started shopping at Hot topic. His accent sounds like someone trying to do a French accent while having a stroke, and somehow it's still not the weirdest thing in this movie. But you know, if you think that walrus surgery is messed up, which you should, wait until you meet science's worst parents. You remember in science class when your teacher said, don't drink the chemicals? For one, I didn't fucking listen to that teacher. They were dumb. I'm drinking the chemicals. Well, anyways, these scientists didn't just drink them. They created a whole new species and then got freaky with the species. And by like freaky, I mean like Alabama meets Jurassic Park meets 50 Shades of Grey with a more weirdness. Splice follows two scientists who clearly never watched a single sci-fi movie in their lives. Instead of doing normal illegal experiments like making glow-in-the-dark rabbits, they decide to mix human and animal DNA to create what can only be described as evolution's drunk text messages to their ex. The result is Dren, who starts off looking like E.T. had a baby with a chicken, then somehow grows up to become weirdly attractive. Yeah, just hold that thought for a second, because this is where this movie takes a hard left turn into nope territory. Look, I'm not here to kink shame anyone, but when your lab experiment starts giving you bedroom eyes, maybe it's time to reconsider your career choices. But unfortunately, this is where things get extra spicy. These scientists raise Dren like their daughter, which would be sweet if it wasn't for, well, everything that happens next. It's like watching the world's worst episode of Super Nanny, except instead of a bratty kid, you've got a rapidly evolving hybrid that can literally stab you with its tail. Yeah, it gets weirder though. Turns out Dren can pull a Jurassic Park and switch genders, leading to what I can only describe as the most awkward family reunion ever. And if you're sitting there right now thinking, it can't get worse, congratulations. You have more faith in humanity than this movie does. This film ends with a pregnancy reveal that makes your cousin's gender reveal party look tame in comparison. At least when your cousin's party starts a forest fire, it doesn't potentially create a new species. This is why we can't have nice things in science. Someone is always trying to make the sexy monster, and fuck it. But speaking of inappropriate relationships, let's talk about a woman who really, and I mean really, loves her car. You know how guys always say she's a beauty when they're talking about their cars? Well, Titane takes that to a whole new level. This isn't your typical guy who names his car situation. This is full on, I got fucked by a Cadillac. Yes, that is a real plot point. Our main character, Alexia, has a titanium plate in her head from a car accident as a child, which apparently turned her into the world's most committed car enthusiast. Most people just get PTSD from car crashes. She got a fetish when she became an adult. Talk about turning lemons into really weird lemonade. But wait, there's more. When she's not busy having intimate moments with trucks, she's on a casual murder spree. You know, normal hobbies, like how some people do yoga or knit, except instead of downward dog, she's doing downward stab. But the best part, this isn't even the weirdest thing that happens in this movie. To escape getting caught, she decides to pose as a missing boy and gets adopted by his father. Because apparently, when you're pregnant with a car baby, the logical solution is to bind your growing belly, break your own nose, and pretend to be someone's long lost son. To be frank, I've seen less complicated plots in Christopher Nolan movies. The father, bless his heart, is either the most oblivious man alive or in such deep denial he could teach a masterclass in it. Even as Alexia is literally leaking motor oil, yeah, you heard that right, this man is just happy to have his son back. Parent of the year material right here, folks. And the birth scene, let's just say it gives a new meaning to the term auto body work. If you've ever wondered what a human car hybrid baby looks like, first of all, what the fuck is wrong with you? Second, this movie has your answer, and you will never be emotionally the same. This film won Palme d'Or at Cannes Film Festival, which is French for this is a fucking weird movie. This just proves that even fancy film festivals sometimes just throw their hands up and say, sure, why not? It's like if David Cronenberg directed Fast and Furious, but in French and with more existential dread. But if car pregnancy weirded you out, wait until you see what happens when metal meets man. You ever had one of those dreams where you're falling, but instead of waking up, I'm waking up. Sorry, I saw a Brittany Broski meme and I can't get it out of my head. I'm waking up from ash and dust. Yeah, but instead of waking up, you turn into a walking pile of scrap metal while industrial music screams in your ears. No? Well, welcome to Tetsuo, the Iron Man. And no, not like, I am Iron Man. This isn't your typical Man of Steel story. You know, unless Superman was directed by a fever dream having its own acid-fueled fever dream. What's the plot then? Well, a salaryman accidentally kills a person who has fetishes about metal, who likes inserting steel rods into his body. Already a great start to any story, right? Like any demented version version of I hit someone with my car, except instead of insurance information, they exchange tetanus. But here's where it gets fun. And by fun, I mean absolutely horrifying. Our salaryman starts transforming into metal, beginning with a small wire poking out of his cheek. And if you're thinking right now, oh, that's not bad, just wait until he gets a drill where no drill should ever be. Yes, you are understanding what I'm saying. And there is a freaky scene in this movie as well. Think about that. Let's just say this guy's trip to the airport security would get a little weird. The whole movie is shot in this grainy black and white style that makes it look like a snuff film made by an art student having an existential crisis. In the sound design, imagine if a garbage disposal had a baby with a dial-up modem, and that baby was really fucking pissed. Your neighbor's 3 a.m. drum practice suddenly doesn't seem so bad, does it? The transformation scenes are what would happen if David Cronenberg designed Transformers while having a mental breakdown after his ex-wife left him. We're talking drills erupting from faces, bodies melting into machinery, and a final form that looks like someone gave sentience to a junkyard. This isn't body horror. This is body heavy metal. In the finale, 2 guys turned metal monsters duke it out in what I can only describe as the world's most aggressive recycling program. It all ends with them fusing together and declaring they'll turn the whole world into metal. Because apparently, when you become a metal monster, your first instinct is to start a very aggressive urban renewal project. This movie makes David Lynch films look like episodes of Peppa Pig. And the best part, this was someone's first date movie in Japan. Imagine trying to explain that one to your therapist. You know, when writing this script, I almost didn't want to include this movie, but now we've got to talk about the movie that'll make everything else we've discussed look like Sesame Street. And no, I am not even being dramatic at all by saying that. You know when some sequels try to outdo the original? Well, Human Centipede 2 looked at the first film and said, hold my fucking beer. Our main character, Martin, is literally a super fan of the first Human Centipede movie, which would have been everyone's first red flag. If someone tells you their favorite film is Human Centipede, that's not a quirky fun fact. That's a warning sign. This movie is shot in black and white because apparently color would have been too much for human eyes to handle. This film follows Martin, a parking garage security guard with, let's just say he's got ambitious dreams. While most fangirls collect posters or write fan fiction or keep a life-size Jonas Brothers cutout in their closet, Martin decides to make his own 12-person Human Centipede. Because when you work nights in a parking garage, sometimes you need a hobby. Though maybe you could just try collecting fucking stamps next time. Now, I could tell you about the specific horrors that happen in this movie, but I actually want to keep my YouTube channel. Let's just say it makes the first film look like a Disney Channel original movie. The director, Tom Six, apparently watched his own first movie and thought, you know what this needs? More everything, and with less medicine and more snuff. And by everything, I mean everything your therapist warns you about. The most disturbing part isn't even the gore. It's Martin himself. He doesn't even say a single word throughout the entire film, barely. He just makes these weird wheezing noises while living with his mother and planning his masterpiece. It's like if Norman Bates watched too many medical documentaries and decided to get creative. And because this movie hates joy, it ends with, let's just say that Martin's project doesn't go as planned. And it turns out creating a Human Centipede isn't as easy as the first movie made it look. Who knew? Actually, don't answer that. I don't want to know who's taking notes right now. The first film was so graphic it got banned in several countries, which is basically the movie equivalent of getting kicked out of Hot Topic for being too edgy. And somewhere out there, Tom Six is probably taking that as a compliment. And for one more warning, if you go watch this movie, I am telling you right now, it will scar you. People's kneecaps get like severed. And that's not even close to the worst part about this movie. But if you're crazy enough to actually go ahead and watch that movie anyways, you should like this video and subscribe because you're gonna love all the other videos I post about horror movies. If you wanna watch more of them, you should click this video on screen right now.